The ROG Ally released in 2023. Is this still a good option in 2025? With so many newer handhelds getting released, is this still like a good option to have compared to other handhelds such as the MSI Claw 8 AI with a faster processor and the Nintendo Switch 2? So in this video, I'm going to show you if the first ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme chip, 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of SSD is still a good option in 2025. With newer handhelds such as the MSI Claw 8 costing £900, which I'm guessing is about $1,200 to $1,300 US, and the ROG Ally, which you can find for so much cheaper, you can find it even for around £350, so about $500 US. So is this still a good option? And how does the Z1 Extreme chip compare with the latest generation of handhelds? The ones that are about to be released, such as the Xbox ROG Ally X with the Z2 Extreme chip and the Lenovo Legion Go 2 with the Z2 Extreme. And also, how does it compare with the MSI Claw 8 in terms of performance and everything else? So in this video, I'm going to show you if you should save your money and get the original ROG Ally instead.
The ASUS ROG Ally has the AMD Z1 Extreme with the Radeon 780M iGPU. It has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM, 512 gigabytes of M.2 2230 SSD, 7-inch 1080p 120Hz VRR with AMD FreeSync Premium, and a 40 watt-hour battery capacity.
So on the original ROG Ally, what you get is a power button, which is also a fingerprint scanner. You get the volume up and down. You get a USB-C, just one USB-C port. You get a XGM port for your external graphics card. You get a micro SD and your headphone jack. There is no other ports, just one USB port, which is, in my opinion, not enough, but that's what you get with the first ROG Ally. There is a lot of really good cases available for the ROG Ally, and this is one option you have. This is the Skull & Co. protective cover, and it's very easily put on like this. Mainly protects the back and the sides. And another option you have is a travel case. This is also from Skull & Co. This is obviously provides more protection and also has a handle. And you can even put the ROG Ally with the protective case inside the travel bag. So yeah. The controls on the ROG Ally is among the best I've used in any handheld. The joysticks are actually among the best I've ever used. Extremely accurate and precise when it comes to pretty much any game, including shooters. The buttons are really nice. They're not very small. They're just the perfect size. You also have the D-pad here, which is one of the best. I've played Street Fighter, and I can tell you can very easily pull off special moves with this. It's very accurate, very similar to the Xbox controller. You also get the shoulder buttons here and the triggers, and they're also extremely nice and easy to use, very comfortable. The start and select buttons are at the top here. And you have two dedicated buttons for the ROG Ally. One is to bring the Armory Crate software and the other is for the overlay. So overall, in terms of the controls, this is among the best you can get. The only downside is that the joysticks are not Hall effect, so you are prone to getting stick drift if you're not careful. If you turn on desktop mode from here, you can use the right joystick as a mouse, and actually using the mouse like this is very satisfying to use because it's so precise. It detects even the slightest bit of movement, as you guys can see. So we can very easily select what you want, and you can pretty much use the mouse. This way you can obviously use the touch screen, but I just really like using the mouse like this, just simply because of how easy it is to use. Now, I have used other devices, other handhelds, in which you also get to use the left or right joystick as a mouse, but none of them come close to how precise and accurate the controls are on the ROG Ally. Very good joysticks and buttons on the ROG Ally. In terms of ergonomics, the ASUS ROG Ally, I find it very easy to hold, very comfortable to hold. It's one of the most comfortable handhelds I've ever used. Much more comfortable than the Nintendo Switch 2, which is just not very comfortable in terms of how the joysticks are placed. But even though the ASUS ROG Ally joysticks are placed in a slightly similar position, it's just so much easier to use this right joystick, whereas on the Nintendo Switch 2 I have to all the way go like this with my hand, and that's just going to cramp my right thumb. So in terms of controls, it's one of the best. Now, if I compare it to the MSI Claw 8, this is also a very comfortable handheld to use. So very similar to how the MSI Claw 8 is made in terms of the joysticks. You also get 2 extra buttons on the back here. So this is the M1 and M2. You can assign any keys to this. So overall, amazing controls on the ASUS ROG Ally. If you press the button on the select on the top left here, it brings up the overlay, and this is one of the best overlays I've used on any handheld. It's very quick and responsive, and it just always works no matter what. And you get so many different options here. So as you can see, you've got your TDP controls. So you get 3 default options. You get silent at 10 watts, performance at 15 watts, and turbo at 25 watts. If you press it again, you get manual, and in this manual option, you have your custom TDP settings, so you can go all the way from 7 watts to 25. So this is a really good software, very easy and very responsive to use compared to some of the other handhelds I've used, which are just not very responsive and not as good as the ones included with the ROG Ally. So you also get the option to change the control mode from desktop to auto to gamepad. If you're playing games, you can just change the gamepad, or you can leave it at auto, which will auto detect what you're trying to use. You also get a real-time monitor, which is very useful. You can move it around, and you can make it simple or more advanced. So I can have minimal, which is just the battery, the watts, the FPS, and the time. And you can make it more advanced by pressing this button. So with the square, you have a square here with all different types of information. You also have a FPS limiter, so 30, 45, 60, 90, and 120. And you have the max, which is unlimited. and you can press the show desktop if you're running anything. So for example, if I'm running Windows Explorer, I can just press, and if we go to desktop, also a very good option here, CPU boost. I recommend everyone to turn this off unless you're playing PS3 emulation, which needs maximum CPU power, but for most titles you need to turn this off to save battery life and even increase performance. So a lot of different options here that you can change. Now if you press the right button under the start here, you get Armory Crate, which is one of the best handheld softwares I've used. You can pretty much get everything you need in this software. So if you go to the settings tab, you get all these different options here. You can change your control mode. You can assign all the different keys to all the different buttons. You have gyro. Now gyro on the ROG Ally is one of the best I've used. Just as good as the Steam Deck. Unfortunately, the MSI Claw 8 doesn't have very good gyro. It does come with gyro, but just not as good as the ROG Ally. The Switch 2 also have very good gyro, but this is dependent on the developer. If they choose to put it in the game, there's no manual setting on this internal Switch 2, but on the ROG Ally, you get full control of the gyro, and this makes playing first-person shooters very easy. You can pretty much control anything in the Armory Crate. You can have all the different overlay buttons here. You can change the lighting to all the different types that you want, like static. I just leave it at rainbow. And you get all these different options here to make it bright. In terms of everything else, you get your performance tab here, and in the performance tab, you can change your TDP settings. You also have GPU settings. Now under GPU settings, I do recommend to turn Radeon image sharpening on and just turn everything else off. Memory assigned 6 GB. I highly recommend for pretty much any game. So yeah, overall, one of the best and easiest to use handheld software as an only handheld.
Running Street Fighter 6 in performance mode at 720p high settings. As you can see, I am getting around 55 FPS in World Tour mode. This is very good performance at the performance mode, because at the performance mode we are not using the full TDP. As you can see, we are only using about 20 watts. So at 20 watts, getting around 50 FPS in Street Fighter 6 on the ROG Ally is a very good performance. Now let's see what kind of FPS I will get when I pick a fight. So when you start fighting in World Tour mode, as you can see, it's still in the 50 and even hitting the 60 FPS mark. It is quite responsive, which is great. So the performance on the original ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme chip is still really good. So now I will go ahead and choose fighting ground and see how the performance is when you start fighting, because this is the reason why people buy Street Fighter 6. It's for the fighting ground mode. Now in the character selection menu, the FPS is at 60 FPS. And It's really good performance actually so far, but let's just see how the performance is when you start fighting. So on the performance mode with 20 watts being used, let's see how the performance is on the ROG Ally. Now if you look at the settings, I am running the game at 720p, which is more than good enough for this game, and I'm mostly using high settings. So it's a very good performance. It's hitting 60 FPS, and it looks like it's almost like a locked 60 FPS. So the performance on the ASUS ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme chip in Street Fighter 6 is amazing. The D-pad is also really good. It's like the Xbox style D-pad, and it's one of the best D-pads you can have in a handheld. So if you're thinking of getting this handheld for fighting games, you will not have any problems. It's actually a really good handheld for fighting games. As you can see, I am able to pull off a lot of special moves very easily, and it's actually quite enjoyable to play fighting games in this handheld. The temperatures are staying at around 67 degrees Celsius while you're in performance mode, which is great. Now I've decided to come back to Oultaws mode to see turbo mode, see how good the FPS is at turbo mode, and it's actually similar to performance mode, surprisingly. Even though we're using more watts, we're using about 30 watts, this performance is almost the same. So I would recommend you guys just to stick to performance mode unless a game definitely needs it. At silent mode, as you can see, the frames are very low. It's about 18 to 19 frames per second, so definitely don't play in silent mode. Performance mode is more than good enough, and actually because of the VRR display, it feels very smooth and very responsive. Star Wars Outlaws on the ASUS ROG Ally. I'm currently using 720p with FSR 3 frame generation on and upscaler ultra performance quality. The video settings are at the lowest possible quality, and on turbo mode, as you can see, I am getting high 60s and even going into the 70s. So really good performance for this handheld, and this game is actually quite playable on turbo mode. On silent mode, so as you can see, I am getting high 60s going into the 70s, very playable on turbo mode on the ASUS ROG Ally. Dropping the TDP down to silent mode, we are only getting about 25 FPS on average, so that's very unplayable. On performance mode, which is what I recommend you guys to play on, it's very playable, going into the high 60s even. So very playable at 20 watts on the ASUS ROG Ally. How does Portal run on the ASUS ROG Ally? Let's find out. So I'm just going to lower the TDP to the absolute minimum, which is 7 watts on the ASUS ROG Ally. And let's see how this game performs at 1080p. So 1080p, highest settings, and I'm getting on average 55 to 60 FPS, which is not bad actually. On performance mode, I am getting high 80s and even going into the 90s, using about 14 to 15 watts, dropping down even to 12 watts. And yeah, this is very playable on performance mode. Now I'm running Robocop, and it's running at 720p with TSR, mostly medium settings with the effects on low. Running the game in performance mode, I am getting average around 55 FPS, and this is actually very good performance on this handheld, because this is a very demanding game, and because of the VRR screen at 55 FPS average, it does feel very smooth. This is a very demanding section of the game. So at turbo mode we are going into the 60s, so that's almost like a 60 locked FPS experience, so it's going to feel very smooth. So actually, yes, this game is very playable, and this is without frame generation. So I'm very impressed with the performance of Robocop on the Z1 Extreme chip on the ASUS ROG Ally. This is Black Myth Wukong, the benchmark tool, running on performance mode at 720p, frame generation on, and the lowest settings. It looks like we are hitting around mid 70s. Looks like it's in the 75 FPS average. On performance mode, using about under 20 watts, and it looks like it's getting very good FPS, actually around mid 70s. This is a very demanding game. You should definitely not play over 720p on this handheld. 720p is more than good enough, and you also need frame generation for the smoothest experience. And as you can see, the frames, and as you can see, so the average FPS is 77, and this is actually not bad at all. It's quite playable at only 15 watts. So using only 15 watts with the temperatures staying at around 64 degrees Celsius, this is actually very impressive. I am now using turbo mode, which will increase the TDP to about 30 watts. And as you can see, it looks like we are hitting about 88 FPS, even going into the 90s. So at the moment it's about 88, 89 FPS, and it does even go into around 90 FPS from time to time. So at 30 watts with the temperature at around 72 degrees Celsius, this is actually very good. On average we got 88 FPS, same settings as before. At 30 watts, this is actually amazing performance, and this game, Black Myth Wukong, is definitely very playable on the ASUS ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme chip. At 17 watts 1080p, Cyberpunk on the Z1 Extreme on the ASUS ROG Ally averaged about 32 FPS, whereas the Z2 Extreme on the MSI Claw A8 averaged 39 FPS, so about 7 FPS more than the Z1 Extreme. The Claw 8 with the Intel 258V processor averaged 42 FPS, so just 3 FPS more than the Z2 Extreme. On Shadow of Tomb Raider, the winner here was the Z2 Extreme, averaging 57 FPS, with the Claw 8 falling just behind at 54 FPS. the Z1 Extreme averaged 44 FPS. Forza Horizon 5, and the winner again was the Z2 Extreme at 74 FPS. The Claw 8 falling just behind with just 1 FPS less than the Z2 Extreme, and the Z1 Extreme on the ROG Ally not that far behind actually at 62 FPS. Black Myth Wukong, and we had a tie with the Z2 Extreme performing the same as the MSI Claw 8, averaging 43 FPS, and on the Z1 Extreme averaging 32 FPS. Now if we go on to 25 watts, remember this was at 17 watts, so let's see how the performance is at 25 watts. So this is at 25 watts at 1080p, same games, same settings, the only thing changed is the watts, so from 17 to 25 watts. Cyberpunk 2077 on the ASUS ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme. This game got an average of 43 FPS on the Z1 Extreme and just 4 FPS more on the Z2 Extreme, averaging 47 FPS. On the Claw 8, an impressive 55 FPS. On Shadow of Tomb Raider, we have almost 60 FPS on the Z1 Extreme and 64 FPS on the Z2. Just 1 FPS more on the Claw 8 at 65 FPS. Forza Horizon 5, 76 average FPS on the Z1 Extreme, about 4 FPS more on the Z2 Extreme, averaging 80 FPS, and just 3 FPS more than the Z2 Extreme on the Claw 8. Black Myth Wukong, averaging 44 FPS on the Z1 Extreme, and just 5 FPS more on the Z2 Extreme at 49 FPS average, and just 1 FPS more on the Claw 8 than the Z2 Extreme, averaging 50 FPS. So at 25 watts, what you are seeing across the board is that there isn't that much of a difference in terms of FPS between these three handhelds. So the last generation Z1 Extreme, as you can see, is just a few FPS less than the current generation Z2 Extreme. So the jump in performance you are getting going from the Z1 Extreme to the Z2 Extreme is almost negligible. So if you're thinking of buying a handheld console right now with good enough performance, the jump isn't really worth it, you know. For the next generation of handhelds with the Ryzen Max Plus 395 processors, however, the difference is huge. It's almost double to triple what you are seeing right here. So in terms of performance, I would say the Z1 Extreme is still good enough in 2025. The screen on the ASUS ROG Ally is a 7-inch VRR 1080p 120Hz with up to 550 nits of brightness. It's one of the best LCD screens I've ever used. It's very sharp, the colors are quite good, the contrast ratio is very nice, and overall it's just a really great screen for a handheld of this size. The viewing angles are quite nice, and as you can see, everything just pops and is it's a very nice screen. It's also a matte display, well, not full matte, but almost like the Steam Deck OLED Premium Edition with the 1TB. It doesn't reflect a lot of light, so that's really good for a handheld, because sometimes you play next to the window and there's light coming through, and the last thing you want is reflections ruining your gameplay. So with this matte type of display, it's actually one of the best LCD screens you can have on a handheld. And I will be showing you guys a comparison between the ASUS ROG Ally 7-inch screen with the MSI Claw 8 8-inch screen, because both are LCD, but as you will find out, the Claw 8 screen is, at least in my opinion, not as good as the ASUS ROG Ally 7-inch screen. So here I have the ROG Ally
and the MSI Claw 8 running a 4K 60 FPS video at the maximum brightness. So as you can see, the brightness on both of these devices is at the absolute maximum, and since they're both LCD panels with VRR and 120 Hz, I wanted to see what the difference is. And as you will see in the video, the ROG Ally is actually a higher quality image and sharper. So even though this is older than the Claw 8, it actually produces better image, sharper and better colors, which is something that I'm really surprised about, and one of the reasons why I am not going to be keeping the Claw 8. So let's begin the video. So I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera, but the ROG Ally is much brighter and sharper. Especially in this image, I can see that the ROG Ally is so much brighter and sharper, and the colors just look so much better. So as you can see, the pink is so much better in this ROG Ally as compared to the Claw 8. Yeah guys, that's something I was really surprised about when I used the Claw 8 next to the ROG Ally. So the screen they've used here, I think, is one of the best LCD panels. So in this test, I'm going to be comparing the speaker quality of the ROG Ally with the Claw 8. Now the Claw 8 is supposed to have the best speakers on any handheld, but I have found that the ROG Ally is just as good, if not better. So let's just do a direct comparison between these two. They're both running at exactly 30% volume. So as you can see, 32, so I'll just turn it into 30, and the same thing with ROG Ally at 30 volume, and I will be going up as we go along. So let's just start off with 30. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use. And now for the Claw 8. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, shining through. I will just increase the volume to 50. And I'll increase the volume for the ROG Ally to 50. And now 100 on both. Let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through? Bid from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe.
The ASUS ROG Ally is quite portable. It was one of the most portable 7-inch PC handhelds when it was first released. However, it is not exactly pocketable. As you can see, I did have difficulty putting this into my pockets. It is quite large to be able to fit into a pocket.
So I will be running the Black Myth Wukong benchmark tool on both the ROG Ally and the MSI Claw 8 in order to test the fan noise. Now I'll be doing this test at the maximum TDP, which is about 30 watts on the ROG Ally and also about 30 watts on the Claw 8. So this will give us a good idea of how loud the fans get on the ROG Ally. So let's go ahead and start the test. Now you can see the TDP we're using here. So as you can see, it's running at 30 watts on the ROG Ally. And we're getting about 75 degrees Celsius. It will take some time for the fans to kick in, so I'll just wait for a bit. So on the ROG Ally, the test has been running for about a minute now, and this is basically what you're going to get at the max watts, around 76 degrees, and the fan noise is a bit loud but not that loud. So now I'm putting the fan noise, the fans close to this microphone. The Claw 8 is one of the quietest handhelds in the market. It's known for its quiet fans and good cooling. So I'm currently running the Claw 8 at the maximum TDP, and this is the kind of fine noise you're going to expect. It sounds slightly quieter than the ROG Ally at the maximum TDP. So I'm just going to be doing now the temperature test to see how hot the device gets at different TDPs. So the first TDP I will be testing is 30 watts, as you guys can see here, and at 30 watts, which is the maximum TDP, you'll get under 80 degrees Celsius, which is amazing. The fans are kicking in and it's staying under 70 degrees. So I'm just going to adjust the TDP, and I'm going to use performance mode, which is 15 watts, and I'm just going to see the temperature drop. So it's still around 20, so I'm just going to wait for it to go to 15. Actually, when you put it in performance mode, it doesn't automatically go to 15 watts. It usually stays at 19 to 20, and then after a while it goes to 15. But at 20 watts, you get around 66 degrees Celsius, and you can't really hear the fans, which is amazing. So I'm just gonna put it in silent mode, and at silent mode the temperature is around 60 degrees and the fans are even quieter. So yeah, not bad. The cooling is not bad on this. This is actually the updated drivers, so much better than it was initially released. The ASUS ROG Ally has a 40 watt-hour battery capacity. In silent mode it uses about 15 watts in total, so you're looking at just over 2.5 hours of gameplay. In performance mode it uses about 13 watts in total, so just under 1.5 hours of gameplay. In turbo mode it uses over 40 watts, so you are getting less than 1 hour. So definitely one of the worst battery lives in any PC handheld. So what do I think of the ASUS ROG Ally in 2025? The ASUS ROG Ally gets an 8.9 out of 10. It's amazing value, very good performance, only slightly worse than the Z2 Extreme. It has a great screen, although not OLED, one of the best LCDs you can get in a handheld. The joysticks are amazing, they're very accurate and precise, and the buttons are very good, with one of the best gyros you can have on a handheld. It's quite a comfortable handheld to hold and has one of the best speakers, almost as good as the Claw 8. What I hate about this handheld is the battery. It's the worst battery I've ever used in a handheld. The fan noise, it does get pretty loud. The thermals and SD card, although these issues have been fixed since launch, it may still persist in some of these handhelds. And also the joysticks, although it's one of the best ones I've ever used in a handheld, it's not Hall effect, so it is prone to stick drift. So if you're looking for the best bang for your buck, I would highly recommend considering the ROG Ally. Anyways guys, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.